So we are so pleased that you could join us today for Empower Your Business with ABLE, presented by NDI's ABLE NRC team. Just a quick disclaimer, the contents of this webinar were developed under a grant from the US Department of Education. The department does not mandate or prescribe practices, models, or other activities described or discussed in this document. The contents of this webinar may contain examples of, adaptations of, and links to resources created and maintained by another public or private organisation. The department does not control or guarantee the accuracy, relevance, timeliness, or completeness of this outside information. The content of this webinar does not necessarily represent the policy of the department. This publication is not intended to represent the views or policy or be an endorsement of any views expressed or materials provided by any federal agency. And with that, I am delighted that we actually get on with what we're here for today and start our webinar. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Jodie Ellis, our Director of the National ABLE Resource Centre. Over to you, Jodie, and thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me. It is my pleasure to be with you today to present to you how to empower your business with ABLE. And ABLE is achieving a better life experience, and I really want to connect at how ABLE can support self-employment. I am joined today by my colleagues, Marlene Uliski and Lori Schaller, and they are both ABLE subject matter experts, and they will be helping to answer the questions that you place in the Q&A. And I will say from the prior webinars that we do, I would say over 60% of individuals' questions that are raised during a webinar are actually answered. So you may want to wait until we cover material before you ask a question, because chances are I will be covering a question that you may have. So with that, we will get started. And on the next slide, I'll tell you just a little bit about who we are. ABLE National Resource Center is owned and managed by the National Disability Institute, and we were founded in 2015 after the ABLE Act was passed into law. We recognize the need to raise awareness about ABLE accounts and to be an independent source of reliable and objective information. So over the past 10 years, we have created an array of educational materials, and I encourage you to visit our website, which is ablenrc.org, for all things ABLE. And our mission is to educate, promote, and support the positive impact that ABLE can make on the lives of millions of Americans with disabilities and their families. So I'll start covering today's agenda. On the next slide, we have an ABLE overview. So I'll just lay the foundation of explaining ABLE before I get into explaining how it can support business. I'll cover ABLE account eligibility, discuss some ABLE plan features, how contributions and the ABLE to Work provision can help support your financial journey. I'll cover what qualified disability expenses are, or how you can spend funds in your ABLE account, and then how entrepreneurs can use ABLE as a financial resource. So let's get started. And then on the next slide, we'll start with what is ABLE. And ABLE is an acronym for Achieving a Better Life Experience. And as mentioned, the ABLE Act was signed into law in December of 2014. And then in 2015, besides ABLE NRC being founded, the state ABLE plans really spent that year developing their product and what they would offer. And then ABLE accounts have been open since 2016. And an ABLE account is a savings or an investment account, and it is designed exclusively for people with disabilities. It is modeled after 529 education plans. So it is often referred to as a 529A plan. If you see 529A, that is the same thing as an ABLE account. And ABLE allows millions of people with disabilities the opportunity to save and invest money and grow wealth. And it really is a pathway that people with disabilities can use to save not only for their current, but also for their future financial needs that they may have. And on the next slide, I'll talk to you about a few of the advantages for why would you want to have an ABLE account, or what would be the advantages of having one. So first, there are tax advantages to enable. The investment growth is tax-free, and there are a choice of flexible savings and investment options that can align with your goals. And accounts can serve as an alternative to a retirement account. So if you are employed, but for one reason or another, you don't participate in that retirement account, you could have an ABLE account that could take the place of a retirement account. ABLE savings can be spent on a variety of things that can help you stay healthy, independent, have a good life. Funds can be withdrawn as often as needed and at any time. And NDI participated in a research um, uh, study that showed that there are extra costs associated with living with a disability, and ABLE savings can be used to help pay for some of those extra expenses. And the study revealed that on average, households with a working aged adult with a disability require on average 28% more income to have the same standard of living as a household without a member of a disability. So an ABLE account can help, in that situation, paying for those extra expenses. On the next slide, ABLE protects eligibility for public benefits. So up to $100,000 in an ABLE account is disregarded as a resource, and it will not affect someone's eligibility for SSI, or supplemental security income. So you could have SSI and have up to $100,000 in your ABLE account and still be eligible for monthly payments, versus the current $2,000 limit for an individual that is currently in place for SSI. Now, if you don't receive SSI, ABLE still can protect your eligibility for other public benefits. So you can save up to your state plan limits. So the state plan limits do vary. Currently, they vary from being able to save over $235,000 to nearly $600,000 without impacting public benefits such as FAFSA, which is student federal aid, HUD, which is housing assistance, SNAP, or food assistance programs, SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance, as well as Medicare and Medicaid eligibility. So if your funds are in an ABLE account, I'll just recap that, and you are participating in an ABLE plan that has a limit of $500,000. You can have $500,000 in your ABLE savings and still maintain your eligibility for Medicaid, for HUD, for food assistance programs, SSDI. And, I will say also with SSI, you can certainly save over the $100,000 limit, but at that point, your pay status would be impacted by SSI. So you still maintain your eligibility for SSI if the need ever arose in the future, if your circumstances change, but it would impact your payment status. And then the other great thing about how ABLE can protect your eligibility for public benefits is that direct contributions into your ABLE account from family, from friends, from a trust, from a 529 college savings rollover account, those do not count as income by these benefit programs. So that's a little bit different compared to other types of savings and investment accounts. So if you really think about that, ABLE can be life-changing because it enables someone that is receiving supplemental security income or Medicaid, and they can save up to $100,000 compared to up to $2,000 in terms of asset limits and maintain the eligibility for services and supports that are needed. That's really where the true power of ABLE comes in. And on the next slide, I do want to cover who is eligible for ABLE. There are two factors to evaluate or to use to determine your eligibility. One is the age of onset of disability. In 2025, to be eligible, the ABLE account owner must have an onset of a qualified disability before the age of 26. The great news, though, is that this eligibility is expanding to the onset of a disability before the age of 46 as of January 1st of 2026. So one is, when did your disability start? Then, if you meet that criteria, the next thing to factor or to evaluate to determine eligibility is the severity of the disability. So not every person with a disability would be qualified for ABLE. The disability has to result in severe functional limitations. So example of that would be that it's expected to last or has already lasted 12 months or more. It could be for a terminal condition, could be that individuals who are blind are eligible for ABLE, and individuals who have received Social Security, SSI, or SSDI for that disability would automatically be eligible and would not need a signed physician statement. But if you haven't received Social Security, but you still have a severe functional limitation, you could ask your physician to sign a statement saying that you have, they're verifying that you have that qualified disability. And on the slide deck, we have provided a sample of a statement that a physician could sign. And the physician doesn't have to sign that particular statement, but it does meet all of the criteria. And you would just want to keep that on file because that is your proof that you have the qualified disability. Or you could have your SSI or SSDI beneficiary status as also as proof that you do qualify. And I want to just mention that there's no income requirements or limits for ABLE eligibility. So you could be earning over $100,000 a year, or you could be earning zero, or you could be earning $5,000 a year. The earnings have no impact on ABLE eligibility. And employment status also has no impact on ABLE eligibility. So you could be unemployed, you could be employed, you could be self-employed. None of your employment status just does not have any impact. So people who are employed are eligible for ABLE, and people who are unemployed are eligible for ABLE. So that pretty much covers eligibility. I do want to explain on the next slide the Able Age Adjustment Act. I mentioned that as of January 1st of 2026, the eligibility is expanded to those who have a disability onset before the age of 46. And what this means is that currently there's about 8 million individuals that are eligible for ABLE. And with this expansion, it's going to increase it to 14 million Americans with disabilities will be eligible to have an ABLE account. And it is not too early to begin preparations now. If you are in that expansion window, you could ask your doctor to sign a written statement now so that you can open up your ABLE account in January of 2026 um, and kind of ring in the new year with opening up an ABLE account and taking advantage of that. So we're about 8 months away from this ABLE age adjustment act going into effect. On the next slide, I do want to talk about some ABLE plan features. Most of the accounts are opened and managed online. Maine is the only state right now that allows a person to open up an account or manage some transactions on their account at a bank. So these are done online. If you do need other options like mailing in an application, you could contact that state ABLE plan for alternatives. A family and other trusted supporters can help the ABLE account owner to open and manage the account if that ABLE account owner needs assistance. The ABLE account is always opened in the name of the person who has a disability. And although we talked about age of onset of disability for eligibility, there's no age restrictions to open or own an ABLE account. So you could have an ABLE account at 1 year of age, or you could have an ABLE account at 62 years of age. So it really does not matter when you open up your ABLE account. When we talk about the ages, it's really just the age of onset of disability happening before a certain milestone. And an ABLE account offers convenience, flexibility. I'll talk about some of the flexibilities later. There's transferability. There are very relatively low fees, and most offer savings, checking, and investment options. So those are some of the features. On the next slide, I will share with you a little bit about the current ABLE landscape. So where are the state ABLE programs? You'll see on the slide, there's a graphic of the outline of the United States, and you're going to see that there are 4 states that kind of have a grayed out color compared to the others. And so the color of green on all the rest of the states, there's 46 state ABLE programs plus DC. Those states all have active plans, and some states have plans that are available nationwide and do not have residency requirements to open up an ABLE account. So it is possible that you could live in another state and choose a state ABLE plan that better meets your needs in another state. And I encourage you to check back often. We've got some comparison tool links in the slide deck here because the information is subject to change. For instance, both Idaho and Wisconsin have some pending legislation pertaining to ABLE plans in their states. And then, we talk about these comparison tools, and there's this interactive state map. These tools compare different features of ABLE plans. So I'll just give you a couple of things that you may want to compare. Some include the fees, the different fees that the state plans have. Maybe availability of a debit card might be a feature that you're interested in, or what investment options a plan has. Some plans have incentive enrollment incentives. And we always share the best practice of looking at your own state's ABLE plan first, because there may be tax credits or tax deductions that are available for residents. So start with your own plan and then kind of look at some others just for comparison in some of the things, some of the features that they offer or have the opportunity for you to enroll in. And it would really, it just is dependent on a very individualized basis and really what you plan to use the ABLE account for. So if you're using it for long-term savings, you're not really using it for any day-to-day interactions, transactions, then maybe investment options that a estate plan has might be of higher interest to you than maybe some of the other features. So those are just some of the things that you might want to look at as you are comparing the different ABLE plans that are available. On the next slide, I will mention once an ABLE plan is selected, there are a variety of ways that contributions can be made into the account. There is a limit to the amount of money that can be placed or deposited into an account within a calendar year. So in 2025, a total of $19,000 can be contributed, and it can be contributed by the ABLE account owner directly, as well as friends, family, a trust, the 529 college savings account rollover, or an employer can make contributions. And what I just want to mention about the employer contributions, especially because we're talking about how ABLE can be supportive of your business and can be supportive of self-employment. An ABLE account protects people's eligibility in terms of resources or assets. An ABLE account does not protect someone's eligibility for benefit programs in terms of income. So your employer contributions, or if you're depositing earned income into your ABLE account, they are subject to impact means tested benefits programs, and they would be subject to income taxes. So I just kind of want to mention that. And, in terms of a best practice tip to maximize your savings, consider setting up automatic contributions if you are able to, because then it's just sort of automatic and it kind of happens without putting too much effort or thought into it on a rolling basis. The other thing I want to just mention briefly before going to the next slide is that the state ABLE plans also have gift card or gifting platforms for their state plans. So some have a U-Gift card, some use the Gift of Independence, where you can send a link to family and friends to make it really easy for them to make contributions into your account. And then a lot of plans have electronic funds transfer options, direct deposit options, and just things that will make these contributions and the steps in contributing as easy as possible. So on the next slide, I do want to mention for employed workers, I'm hoping that many of you who are participating in today's webinar can put ABLE to work for you in 2025. So I mentioned before that there's a $19,000 annual contribution limit. But for ABLE account owners who are employed and who are not contributing to an employer retirement plan this calendar year, you can contribute above the standard contribution limit. So in the continental US, ABLE account owners who are working could contribute up to $15,060 more based upon that or their earnings, whichever is lower. So I guess I'll just explain that a little bit. If you have $10,000 of earnings and you want to contribute more than $19,000, you can, but it would be $19,000 plus your $10,000 in earnings for $29,000 total. But if your earnings are $30,000, then you could contribute up to $15,060. And then of course the amount is higher for residents of Alaska and Hawaii. And typically these amounts have increased every year. And I do want to share that this opportunity to have an additional contribution is through the able to work provision, and it is set to expire at the end of this calendar year. So I just encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity while you can. There is legislation that has been introduced. It does have bipartisan support, so we are working to advocate that the able to work provision could be made permanent. But as it stands right now, it will expire at the end of the year. So contribute more while this opportunity still exists for you. On the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about qualified disability expenses. We refer to these as QDEs for short. And there are lots of categories or umbrellas or domains of types of expenses that could be covered. Some of them include housing, education, health, wellness, basic living expenses, including food, transportation, assistive technology, personal support services, legal fees, financial management fees, funeral or burial expenses, and employment and vocational expenses. And I'm going to cover the employment expenses on the next slide, but I just want to mention these are broad categories. The IRS does not have a list of items that qualify as a QDE or a list of items that don't qualify. So there's no list that exists. But if your expense is under one of these general categories or domains, then it should be a QDE. The other thing that I want to mention, though, in order for it to be considered a QDE, is it must benefit the ABLE account owner. So just say that there has to be a benefit for the ABLE account owner, but the expense itself does not have to be disability related. And the other overall description or category of what makes up a QDE is it is anything that helps the account owner to be healthy, independent, and have a good quality of life. So that's a lot of expenses that could cover under that definition. On the next slide, I do want to cover specifically some work-related QDEs. So when we say employment and training supports as an umbrella category or a domain, this does include self-employment. So self-employment is included in vocational or employment or training. And some examples of what could be QDEs under work-related expenses could be business startup costs, equipment and technology, marketing, business development, developing a business plan, job training, getting a certificate that you may need, other employment support services that you may have, transportation for business needs. So transportation covers both for you personally as well as for your employment or business. Workplace accommodations, home office modifications, self-employment taxes, personal assistant services, tools or uniforms, retirement savings. It's not meant to be an all exhaustive list, but those are just some examples of how your ABLE funds could be spent for work-related QDEs. And on the next slide, I do want to talk about the additional flexibility of QDEs. I mentioned again, it's very broadly defined. So anything that improves health, independence, or quality of life. And the QDE has to benefit the ABLE account owner, but it doesn't have to be exclusively used by the ABLE account owner. So as long as the ABLE account owner benefits from it, other people, family members, colleagues, may also benefit from it. It does not have to be a disability-related expense. And the great thing about funds in an ABLE account is that the funds can be withdrawn at any time. and as often as needed to pay for QDEs. And you know what I'm not sure if this is, oh yeah, I think I might be covering it on the next slide, but I'll just mention it now and then I'll repeat it again. Um, you would just want to use, although you can use your ABLE funds to pay for these types of QDEs that I just described, if there are other sources of paying for that, like grants, startup programs, that business startup programs, you would want to use other community resources or assistance so that you can keep your funds in your ABLE account as long as possible, because then it's just going to help you maximize your ABLE account. But if you don't have access to other funds and you don't have another funding source, then you can rely upon your ABLE savings for those. And examples of some of the like out-of-pocket costs that might not be covered could be prescription costs. So maybe you need to use your ABLE funds for prescriptions. That's just another example. And there's notes about how some of the medically related expenses are QDEs, but they could also be deductible as a IRWE, an impairment-related work expense through Social Security. All right, so on the next slide, ABLE can be a financial safety net. So ABLE accounts can help a person qualify for Medicaid benefits, and it can preserve a person's eligibility for SSI, which may be needed to continue working. And workers can also use Social Security work incentives to preserve benefits and Medicaid. And by working, if a person who received SSI could become eligible for SSDI, could become eligible for Medicare and future retirement benefits as well. And it could be that person as well as their dependents. And an ABLE account can be can be used alongside other supports. So it could be used with vocational rehabilitation services or Medicaid waiver or a PASS plan. And so ABLE is meant to supplement but not replace these other types of programs and resources that are available. And then, as I mentioned before, you can use an ABLE account to cover other independent living expenses when there are other programs that cannot cover these costs. On the next slide, using ABLE and how ABLE can be a business growth strategy or part of your strategy. So you can use your ABLE savings to scale a business. You can leverage ABLE as a financial safety net during a business launch or during slow business periods to help sustain long-term business stability. You can use your ABLE account to plan to save for medical and disability expenses to avoid financial strain. And you can save to invest in new tools, new technology, or services. And I won't repeat about using ABLE account, use other programs that are available for you first before paying out of your ABLE account. So on the next slide, business ownership and ABLE can improve financial independence. Working including self-employment, is one of the best ways to enhance financial well-being. Individuals who receive Social Security disability insurance benefits, and this is based upon work credits. The more work credits you have, the higher monthly payment amount, and the higher payment that you will get at the point of retirement. And savings in an ABLE account can be used for purchases of larger items or assets or more expensive supports and services, both employment or not employment related. And it could be used for educational choices that are just not funded through other channels. On the next slide, I'll talk about ways that you can share ABLE information as a business owner. So ABLE could be used both as a benefit and as a resource. So here as a resource, you could share ABLE information during outreach events and fairs, during your own employee recruitment, upon hire as part of the onboarding process. You can provide ABLE information annually to the entire workforce, to all of your employees. You can provide ABLE-related information in employee resource groups or ERGs. Or you can also share ABLE-related information when an employee contacts human resources to request assistance with choosing or changing some savings options. So those are all places where you can share about ABLE, and it could really become a value add for your workforce, for the employees that you hire. On the next slide, there are other practices that you can implement to support an employee's ABLE journey. So you could have establish and publish company policy where you would make contributions to an ABLE account. You could provide the option to allow for a portion of wages to be direct deposited into an ABLE account. You could offer a same employer match for ABLE contributions as you would for an employer-sponsored retirement plan if you offered a plan in your business. Again, providing resources, and that's part of just benefits counseling or financial education services that you offer to your full workforce. And then you can provide ABLE as a training opportunity to supervisors or to managers as the first line of support. And ABLE NRC has an employer toolkit. So we have lots of flyers and sample letters that you can customize with your company logo. So this information is already compiled. You don't have to recreate it, come up with the terminology yourself. You can kind of use templates that we have at ABLE NRC for your use and for this purpose. On the next slide, I do want to cover how employers can make contributions. So some plans offer payroll direct deposit. And so you would go on the state plan platform and you will be able to see where on the screen that the direct deposit would be an option. And basically the employer is using your ABLE account routing and account number, just like an employer would use a regular bank account number and routing number to make the electronic transfer of funds. And then, as I mentioned before, in addition to family and friends using a UGift or a Gift of Independence link to make contributions, employers can have that same link. And could contribute in that manner. And then lastly, if these contribution methods didn't work with the employer or for your company, the employee themselves, the ABLE account owner, could take a portion of their earnings and then deposit that into their ABLE account. It just, again, be mindful of the $19,000 contribution limit, or if you are working and you are using the able to work provision and contributing more, you could contribute up to $34,060. So just be aware of that as you're doing the direct deposits to make sure you stay within those limits. So next, before I start going over very quickly some ABLE NRC resources that may be helpful, I want to just kind of recap what we've covered today in terms of key features of ABLE accounts. So ABLE accounts offer convenience through online enrollment and management. There's a lot of flexibility in ABLE in terms of who can contribute to the account, what types of account options you want when you open up your account. There's flexibility with QDEs and how you can spend the funds. Other key features is that a person can only have one ABLE account. The ABLE accounts can be open at any age. Um, so those are just some of the features that we covered today. And then in terms of ABLE eligibility, I'm hoping after reviewing the slides and the information that I shared today that you could identify if you're ABLE eligible or someone that you love is ABLE eligible. And you're going to look at two factors: the age of onset of disability as well as severity of disability, to determine if you are eligible to have an ABLE account. You should be able to give a few examples of what is a QDE, or a qualified disability expense. So again, they are broad categories of expenses. It's not meant to be an exhaustive list. It's a guideline for you to kind of determine the types of expenses that you can make with your ABLE funds, but again, could be education, health, wellness, and then of course, business expenses, startup expenses, marketing, equipment, training, accommodations are all examples of QDEs. And then at the heart of this presentation is really about how can ABLE support you and your business growth and your financial security. So besides the employment-related QDEs that apply to your business, there are others. You can use ABLE as a resource. You could use ABLE as a benefit that you're offering to employees through matches, doing direct deposit of earnings into an ABLE account. And then as a business owner, you can really use your ABLE account as a financial safety net as you are launching and as you are operating your business. So that's sort of a recap. The next section is just some resources that we have available on our website that you can take a look at that should be helpful. The first slide here is just two graphics, and on the left side of the page is the front page, and then on the right is the second page, or the double-sided, the back side of that page. And so it's just a two-page informational flyer about ABLE accounts, a lot of things that I've already covered today, but that would be a great flyer that you could disseminate, and that it's downloadable. You could print it, you could have available as you need it. On the next slide, I have listed some resources that we have on the ABLE NRC website. Again, it's ablenrc.org. We have frequently asked questions. There's decision guides, of course, the comparison tools that I had talked about. You can meet our ABLE ambassadors. We have about 20 different ambassadors who are ABLE account owners or family members of ABLE account owners, and they share their experience of how ABLE has helped them achieve financial stability. We have home ownership guides. We've got lots of webinars that are on demand, and podcasts and newsletters that we put out. So I encourage you to take a look at our website to access those. And then on the next slide, we do have some self-employment specific resources. So on the left side of the screen, I sort of have our resource, a screenshot of our resource library, and you can filter by type or by topic. So an example is you can filter by employment, and then you will be able to see all the items that we have in our resource library that are related to employment supports. On the next slide, I mentioned our ABLE ambassadors, so you can learn from others, hear their stories as you get started on your ABLE journey. We do have toolkits. I mentioned that we have the employer toolkit with templates and flyers that you could use, but we also have a service provider toolkit, an ABLE youth transition toolkit, a media toolkit, but lots of different types of resources that you can access. And then lastly, before I turn it back over to the Small Business Hub, NDI, the National Disability Institute, does have a variety of other resources besides ABLE NRC. We do have an American Dream Employment Network, which is an employment network through the Ticket to Work program run through the Social Security Administration. The NDI has a financial resilience center. And then, of course, you're probably most familiar with the Small Business Hub offered by NDI. So with